The Bihar election outcome is being seen as a big political setback for the Modi government. But what will be the impact, if at all, on the economy? Joining us now, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley. Many thanks for sparing time to talk to us. 24 hours after the result, is there a sense of what really went wrong for the BJP in Bihar?
Well, I think we've discussed it at a preliminary level. We'll probably have greater, wider consultations and then come to the eventual conclusion. But I think the principal reason, there could be some additional reasons also,
Sure.
really is that when three major political parties come together, and two of them are big in Bihar, both have been ruling parties at one time or the other, the JDU and the RJD. Both have a distinct social base. They come together, the arithmetic suits them. And therefore, in terms of sheer arithmetic, it was a bigger election.
Right.
It was a bigger combination.
Right.
Now, we had thought that because of the predominance of the developmental agenda and the impact that the BJP and Mr. Modi has had in the country throughout these years, this will create a new chemistry which will ride over arithmetic. That happened in the Lok Sabha elections, but it didn't exactly happen here. And therefore, I must say that it was the index of unity of our opposition, where each one of them was able to transfer his votes to the other.
Right.
So in that big sense, it became a consolidated vote of all our opponents against to each other. So it arithmetically became a much bigger combination.
Sure.
So they had contested the Lok Sabha election separately. They got almost the same kind of vote, but that was a divided vote. So we got an advantage. Even with quantitatively lesser vote than them, we benefited from that division.
Right.
This time they were together. Now this is the principal reason.
Right.
There could be several add-on reasons to this, each one which can contribute. And these are things that matters that we'll get into with a wider.
Sure. So you've mentioned a very important point, and that's, of course, on their side. But let's talk about perhaps some of the mistakes that the BJP also made. And again, like you're saying, a number of reasons are listed out. Some would call it the beef politics, some would call it shrill comments during the campaign, whether it was Amit Shah's remarks on firecrackers bursting in Pakistan, untimely remarks by Mohan Bhagwat on reservation. Would you personally like to say that it was a combination of all these factors?
No, I would not get into each one of these individual comments, because you see, the opponents may have an ability to misinterpret a comment. The RSS stand has never been against reservation. Therefore, you can reposition their stand for your own advantage. That's a different matter. But I don't think that was ever the intention at all. Now, whether that propaganda affected or not affected, I have no means of finding that out. But the fact is that when you lose an election, you start searching for reasons. There could be several reasons.
Right.
I need not go into all of them, but what I have mentioned to you is the principal fact.
But you would agree that it is important to go ahead with course correction. That is
You see, I'll tell you what further could have impacted. I still believe that Nitish Kumar had a fairly large acceptability. Most polls showed him as the most acceptable face, so his personality did impact. Lalu Yadav had a strong vote base, which he managed to transfer. And I think more than what you have mentioned, some statements which deflected from our main theme of development, they are capable of spoiling the narrative at the time of the election.
Absolutely, right.
I did try to intervene on several occasions and correct that narrative. But then I think, as I have told some other channel, the camera has a special fondness for those who are capable of spoiling that narrative. So you people search them out.
we search them out or they search us out. It's difficult to say. But at the end of the day, you've made a very, very honest and humble admission that yes, the narrative in some ways got spoiled. And in fact, let's talk about the economic impact that it's having. You know, many believe that this is a government that's come to power on the development plank. It started out very well. The direction has been perfect, but somewhere it lost the plot. And somewhere what has been happening in the country in the last...
I think lost the plot
is maybe too strong. Maybe too strong.
Is not a fair comment.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. I would say somewhere the narrative has changed, as you
see,
said.
it has not. As far as the government is concerned, it has
Right.
not. To pick up a stray individual and take a district level leader's comment and say the plot has been lost or the narrative has changed is, I think, giving an extreme comment. Every decision in the last 17 to 18 months that we have taken is consistent in the direction of structural changes and reforms. Has this been a decisive government? The answer is yes. Has this been an honest government? The answer is yes. Is it a government which is clear about the direction in which it is moving? It is. Are there political difficulties being created? Of course they are being created.
And that's part of governance.
That's part of governance. And therefore, how do we sidetrack them? How do we jump over them? That's what we have to really manage. I can assure you that as far as I'm concerned, for the next 1 or 2 years, I have my agenda clearly laid down as to the steps I have to take session after session in Parliament.
But doesn't it make it more difficult, the Bihar outcome now?
You see, it can. But the answer is, most decisions which economic reforms require are to be taken executively.
Right.
For instance, if I have to correct the style of the taxation department, if I have all the banking reforms which we are doing, all the sectors which have led to the banking stress that we are addressing, the power sector package we have announced, the Indradhanush package that we have announced, now all this is to be done by an executive decision. My infrastructural spending, my irrigational spending, all this has to be done really by, or divestment for that matter, these are all to be done by executive mandate.
So will that be bulk of your focus now?
According to me, that is very easily possible.
Right.
And that will go on.
Right.
Secondly, there are many decisions which are to be taken legislatively. Many of those legislations are even finance bills. So there is no difficulty. And eventually, I can tell you, Indian Parliament is a responsible institution. They, even our friends in the opposition at times resist some changes, you discuss, they send it to a committee, so it gets delayed by a session or two, and eventually the bills are passed. Now, if you look back, how many legislations do we have, either during the UPA government or the present government, which are related to economic reforms, which have been seriously left blocked and are in the cold storage? Not one. The only one which is under discussion is a constitution amendment for GST. Passed by one house, will go to the other house.
But how do you get it passed in the other house? That remains. And post-Bihar, aren't you being optimistic that you'll be...
Are you aware of one fact? That Bihar and JDU had supported this in the lower house.
Right.
And therefore, Bihar is going to be, as a consuming state, the maximum beneficiary of the GST.
Right.
Its own tax collections are going up. And if Nitish Kumar, as a responsible leader, has been elected on the plank of development, then certainly he needs more revenue for Bihar. Now, which is the way he gets the revenue? We already have a package in place for Bihar, which is party neutral. So whoever rules Bihar will get the opportunity of implementing that. And I don't see any reason why, just because he is in alliance with the Congress at the moment, he will decide that, well, my party will now change its position. If he changes his position, they'll have to explain this. And I'm quite certain, as a responsible leader, that will not happen. So because it is in Bihar, I'm actually trying to make some calculations, which I'll have in this thing, as to how much Bihar benefits from the GST.
Okay, so you're almost reaching out to Nitish Kumar already, saying, make sure that you're supporting the GST.
Well, I am going to reach out to everybody, including Nitish Kumar. I have absolutely no doubt in this. Whenever I get to meet him, one of the several items, what is it that we are going to discuss?
Right.
We are going to discuss how, notwithstanding his government in power, we stand by the package. We want to support the Bihar government in the developmental activities. After all, Bihar is an area where you have a lot of distance to cover in terms of development. So if Bihar grows, India grows. I have absolutely no doubt about that.
And so how confident are you that you'll be able to get GST through?
I think GST will get through. It's only a matter of
when?
time. Therefore, for the Congress also to indefinitely assume an obstructionist position indefinitely may not be so possible, because the country's mood is reform oriented. India has become highly aspirational in terms of its aptitude for change and growth.
It's fair that you say that, and which is why many would wonder that, for a government that really has come to power on the development plank, why is it that the campaign in Bihar moved away from development issues?
Well, I'll tell you, you have to be a politician to know the answer to this. When you speak on several issues. Bulk of your speeches are on development. I think you media persons have started regarding that whole narrative on development as somewhat monotonous. Now, if one sentence is made, which is always intended to add some spice, song and dance to the campaign, I think that becomes the key focus of that day.
And the spice, song and dance backfired?
It doesn't necessarily backfire in every election.
Okay.
I don't think so.
It backfired this time around.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. The election is not because the fact that the Prime Minister got mammoth audiences.
Right.
Is that an evidence of it backfiring?
Right.
He still
I'm
remained the most crucial campaigner. The fact is that the supporting social base that we had numerically was a few percentage points less than the one which a bigger alliance in front of us had.
Right. Making the Prime Minister the face of a campaign, just the sheer number of rallies that he conducted, then just the fact that he was in many ways, putting his own credibility at test. It was a test of supremacy. It was a personal loss of face for him now that the defeat has happened. Do you think that was a big mistake?
I don't think it was a mistake at all. I think for 10 years, people got used to a Prime Minister who never used to campaign. And therefore, you find it unusual that a Prime Minister is also a leader who campaigns.
But
obviously,
are we now seeing a Prime Minister who campaigns too much?
A Prime Minister should campaign, because ultimately it's his policies. He's the principal political leader in a country. There's nothing wrong in his campaigning.
All right, but just the number of rallies that he did, do you think it's been a loss of face for him?
We are getting into hair splitting.
Okay.
Because if a Prime Minister doesn't campaign, he's indifferent to the party's campaign. If he campaigns, he's overdoing it. Now, we can have separate views on this. But the fact is, that has its impact up to a particular point. But then, as I said, there may be other reasons which may be responsible. No election is won or lost on a single reason.
Sure.
There could be several contributing factors.
Of the several contributing factors, and I know I'm coming back to that, the role of the RSS is something that your own MPs are now questioning. There's also talk about the need for course correction, the need for some tough measures, perhaps even some heads that need to roll. Do you think we're going to see some of that coming out as
a... Let me tell you, either the BJP or its leaders or the RSS, there's nothing adverse to our campaign that they have done. Now, I saw today a lot of articles about Amit Shah. I have never seen, very rarely seen a party president who just for months together puts himself in the state and covers every district of the state. Now, merely because you won many elections under him, you've lost some elections under him, therefore the victory belongs to the party and the defeat belongs to the president. It doesn't happen this way. The victory belongs to all of us, the defeat belongs to all of us.
Fair enough, but this time around, particularly that one remark of the firecrackers bursting in Pakistan if BJP loses is being singled out as the one comment that perhaps didn't go down well with voters at all.
I don't know, because you and I have no method of measuring that.
Right.
People can have different views whether there are two views possible whether that comment should have been made or not. But the fact that that remark turned the election, I don't think there is any empirical evidence to suggest that. As I suggested, it's really the width of the alliance in front of us, which was a large alliance, which really had its own impact.
But an admission that yes, mistakes were made and course correction needs to happen.
You see, I don't know. That's something which we will analyze.
Okay.
That we'll analyze. There's always room for improvement in a party. And that room for improvement always comes out of a correction course and a discussion in the party itself.
Do you agree that right now this government is facing a clear perception issue? The fact that a lot of work is taking place on the ground, but for some reason industry leaders are not buying it. The fact that perhaps the government is not sending out the kind of narrative, the kind of headlines that are dominating the media, and yet there is this perception issue being created. Do you believe that there is...
I don't agree with that assessment at all. Whether it's the average person or it's the industry leader or it's the world in general.
Right.
In particular, are buying it. The fact that this government is on a correct course is being accepted world over. World over, it is being accepted that you are the fastest growing economy in the world, despite adverse global situations. Industry leaders are also accepting that whatever growth is coming on the back of larger public investments and policy initiatives, some FDI, a little private sector investment where there is a scope for moving up. Therefore, industry, as I sympathize with them, are facing their own stress issues. But that the industry leaders are not buying it is not a correct perception. The common man in this country is benefiting from the policies of this government. There is a perception of this government of being decisive, of being honest, and on being on a developmental course. There are, as I said, aberrations which take place where somebody makes a loose statement or some incident takes place in Karnataka or in Dadri, which should never have taken place, which are unfortunate incidents. But then those are aberrations in a large country like India. Those are not the pattern as far as India is concerned.
But you believe those were not probably handled as well as they should have been?
No, I don't think so. I think as far as those incidents are concerned, the guilty must be taken to task after a proper investigation. And therefore, to say that in any case, the central government is not concerned with an incident which takes place in the state. You see, a whole political manipulation starts that something happens in UP or in Karnataka with which neither the BJP nor the central government is concerned. Now, put it in our basket.
But it's your own members of the party, it's your own ministers that go out and make statements, and when those are not condemned, that's when it becomes a center issue.
Making a statement is making a statement or even making a loose statement, if I may use that word, is entirely different from who's responsible for the Karnataka incident.
Right. No, fair enough. Those are two separate issues.
Two separate issues. But now, what some people, and even through a reporting which is not fair, has seemed to have done is that obliterate the distinction between those who've committed the crime and those who are just loose talkers.
Okay. Is it time to rein in the loose talkers?
Well, I have already said that we need that whenever the narrative goes in the wrong direction, we make interventions to correct it.
Right.
The party president calls them and asks them questions about it.
And loose talkers have perhaps been responsible for the Bihar defeat in some ways.
I have not said that.
Okay. I'll quickly come back to the economy before we wrap up. I know you have to leave. It's important that the government of India had issued a press release on a report that was put out by Moody's Analytics, terming it personal comments by a junior analyst. It's very well for the government to make that distinction between the fact that it was not by Moody's Investor Services that decides on credit ratings of various countries. But at the end of the day, what the report was really highlighting was again the same factor, that what's hurting the credibility both globally and on the domestic front.
I'll make it clear.
Right.
The report that appeared in Indian media was that the credit rating agency Moody's has cautioned India on this. This was factually not correct.
Sure.
This was not a part of the Moody report. Somebody, a young analyst in one of their analytical organizations, may have said something. And it was one of the major media organizations which had actually highlighted this dichotomy.
Right.
It was one of the web news portals which had highlighted this dichotomy.
Right.
And therefore, that is a fact which got clarified in the media.
Sure, but the commentary wasn't incorrect.
According to me, who is responsible for it? No, the commentary is incorrect, and I'll tell you why it is incorrect.
Okay.
Because India is the most tolerant society in the world. India is a tolerant society, and I will reject any contention which says that a stray incident happening in any part of India makes it intolerant. Therefore, India is tolerant. Some unfortunate incidents take place. That doesn't make India an intolerant society. India is a liberal society. It will continue to remain one.
But the only comment that was there and which got highlighted was the fact that the BJP needs to rein in its members or the Prime Minister risks losing credibility. So that part is what...
Let me tell you, in a large political party, it's quite possible to pick up one or two people who are not very careful about the comments they make. And as I have said, you young ladies and gentlemen in the media are cleverer than them, because you spot them out always.
Okay, as I said, either we spot them out or they land themselves into trouble. We're going to end it with a message that you would have today for investors who are very closely watching what's happening, for the industry.
My view is very clear. We have a clear mandate as far as governance is concerned. We have changed actually the culture of governance in this country. And in terms of developmental politics, the Prime Minister and his government have a particular agenda. They are going ahead with that. They will continue to go ahead with that. We are conscious of political problems that arise. We'll try as far as possible to tackle those problems and move ahead.
Reforms will continue.
Obviously,
the executive reforms will get a bigger push, and legislative also you will
certainly both executive and legislative reforms will get a push, and I am quite certain that those in Parliament, irrespective of which side they sit on, are conscious of their responsibilities.
All right, Finance Minister Jaitley, pleasure talking to you. Many thanks for sparing time to talk to us. Thank you.